Thank you. Hello everyone, thank you very much for coming. You know the format, you've been here before. Ian, welcome to Omnibus.
Thank you.
Welcome to Clapham, and should I say welcome back to Clapham? Because
Yes.
when I first knew you, I think you were a local chap. I think you were
Yes.
just off the common, is that right?
Yes, I've lived south of the river twice.
Right.
Not anymore, obviously.
Just for your information, everyone, this will mostly be about where Ian has lived, about local house prices.
Yeah.
If we get onto his career at the end, that will be a bonus. Ian, so
Yes.
you became. We're going to talk about your career, but the big thing that leaps out at me now, at our ripe old age, is you became editor of Private Eye at 26, which is sort of incredible now. To the delight of Nigel Dempster and all those old fogies.
Yes.
Was that a terrifying prospect for a young man, or did you think you knew how to do it?
I think because I was 26,
Right.
I thought, yeah, that's no problem. Would you like to be editor of Private Eye? Yeah, sure, fine.
Right.
And I had no idea how difficult the job was.
Right.
I had no idea whether I could take it on. And I remember announcing, I said, I'll probably do this job for a couple of years and then maybe move on. And 40 years later, I'm still
Yes,
doing
it is 40
the
years,
job.
isn't it? 40 years next year.
Yeah.
Is there a part of you that looks back now and think, Richard Ingrams, what were you thinking? Giving it to a 26-year-old?
Yeah, he must have been mad. And Richard, and he gave it to me, and there was a strata of middle-aged 40, 50-year-old, quite distinguished sort of journalists who thought they should get the job.
Right.
And when he made this announcement, Peter Cook, who was the proprietor, the comedian, owned Private Eye, and they took him out to lunch in order to get him to change his mind. But they didn't realise that Peter, doesn't really eat lunch. It's more liquid in those days. And he came back, I was standing in the office, and he said, "Welcome aboard."
Wow, fantastic. Good for you.
So there was no coup, and I fired two of them.
Oh, good. Names.
Peter Mackay, Nigel Dempster.
Peter Mackay.
It was a huge pleasure, and in retrospect, it still is.
It's good that you... Yeah.
They ran a gossip column, which I didn't like. And I was even more prudish as a young man, and I just thought, I don't want this. I want jokes. I want journalism. I don't want this.
Right. That's for the diary columns of the Evening Standard
Yeah.
or whatever. Well, it was a great compliment to you from Richard Ingrams, really, to trust a 26-year-old with it. But he must have seen something. I don't want to keep going on about that, but
No.
but think about your own kids now. They're older than that. And,
Yeah, and better than me.
But he saw something in you that has been sort of vindicated, because I think it's fair to say that the Eye, you proved the skeptics wrong over the years.
I nearly bankrupt the magazine.
Well, I was going to come on to that.
times.
But the Eye is stronger than it's ever been. And so tell us, what was the journey? What was the hardest thing about starting in that job?
The hardest thing was sort of working out what it was for, because Richard had a very specific vision of it, and I wanted to know what I could do with the Eye and what it should address. And I had a huge amount of help, and I had brilliant journalists like Paul Foote, the first person I hired, ex of the Mirror, but he was a fantastic investigative journalist. I hired Francis Wheen from The Independent, who was a sort of, I'm sure some of you've read his books, but he was a terrific journalist. And then I hired my friend Nick Newman, who I was at school with. That's a very important hire.
It's who you know.
Who was a brilliant cartoonist and who I wrote with then, and I still write with now. And I just had to work out how to do it. And also, because it was a storm, I just kept getting into libel battles, which looked like I would end the magazine.
Yes.
And there were a couple of times I thought, I've been given this job, and I've blown it.
That must have been terrifying.
Yes, I mean, there was one occasion when I was up on a contempt charge, and it looked like I was going to go to jail for contempt. And I was in the front. My wife, Victoria, was sitting there, pregnant, looking desperate. So hoping the judge would just notice. I had a toothbrush. And I did actually get done. This was on it was a huge case involving Sonia Sutcliffe, who was the wife of the Yorkshire Ripper. You know, other people lost to major celebrities, you know, people like. I lost to the wife of a serial killer, which is pretty impressive. But the case finally went to appeal. I mean, I absolutely thought I'd blown it. £600,000 in damages, it was a huge amount then.
That's justice on a banana, I remember you saying.
Yes, well, with my gift for public speaking, John, which you mentioned earlier, I came out of the court and I was so angry. I'd lost £600,000 in damages, probably £700,000 in costs. That meant Private Eye was trading insolvently. I had completely ruined everything by this one case. And I came out of court and I said, well, if that's justice, I couldn't think of anything at all. So I said, I'm a banana. Which is sort of, it's in the Oxford Book of Quotations, but it's terrible.
It's good. We actually had a spitting image made a puppet of you with a banana on its head. I remember that very clearly, but it got reduced to 60,000 on appeal, didn't it?
It did.
And but I remember there was talk of having to relaunch Private Eye as Privateer.
Yes.
And everyone was sending in money, and I sent in my £100 or whatever at the time, and we all got listed in the magazine for saving the magazine.
Yeah, and we had a fantastic fund, which was called the Banana Balls Fund, as it turned out. But in the end, because we got the judge overturned the verdict in the appeal court and the amount was turned down, every penny that you and others sent, I gave to the victims of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Well, good for you. That's
to
very
a
good.
fund. So I thought, no, it was sort of...
I think that's very laudable, and
the policy of making our readers pay for my mistakes
well,
struck me as short-lived.
But wasn't she subsequently found to have been doing
Yes.
what you accused her of?
Yes, we said that she had accepted money to sell her story, which she had. I mean, that's a criminal offence if you're related to someone who's perpetrated that sort of crime. Anyway, we hired a brilliant barrister and we spent vast amounts of money and we lost totally. And in the next case, she lost her temper in the witness box, which is what we should have tried to get her to do. And then said that Hitler had the right idea and killing prostitutes was a good way of clearing the streets. Ooh. At which point the jury thought, maybe she's not that nice. But sadly, we didn't get that particular, and we went down the Swanee.
Yes.
But I was offered half of her house because she'd committed perjury.
Wow.
And the judge said, we're going to sell her assets. Would you like half of the house? And I thought, do I want half of the psycho house?
A little holiday home for the weekends.
Foolish, I should have taken it.
So I saw somewhere that you are the most sued man in Britain, which is a sort of badge of honour.
Was.
You're not anymore? No, there's been fewer recently.
Also the libel laws changed completely.
Oh, okay.
Partly because of various cases involving the Eye, partly involving the Guardian, and all sorts of people who used to be allowed to sue. If you were a local councillor, as you have been...
I haven't. I've defeated councillor.
I was
I lose
you
elections,
won.
Ian. No. We've got former councillors here, but...
Okay. Well, in the old days, you could sue any piece in Private Eye and the council would pay.
Oh.
If you were a fireman, you sued, they could pay. In a hospital, you sued, they pay. And then finally someone in government noticed that this meant it was no risk for the person involved and a huge risk for us. And they put in a law which stopped people doing it.
Oh, okay.
So that was fantastic. Then they changed the laws on the amounts. It used to be in the old days the jury could award £1 million if it felt like it.
They didn't know. No.
They didn't have any guidance.
No.
I remember we were in court against Geoffrey Archer and we wondered how it was going, and the foreman of the jury wore a bow tie and walked up to Geoffrey Archer on day one and said, "It's a privilege, sir." I thought, I wonder how this is going to go.
Oh, God. So did you, back in those days when you were being sued all the time, did
Yes.
you relish the legal fight, or was it a massive, boring, time-consuming distraction from the business of running the magazine?
It was both. It was quite enjoyable, and the drama was sort of crazy. But I look back on the actual magazine we produced at those times, and it just wasn't that good.
Because you were spending all your time
I was
with
sitting in
lawyers.
court.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing that no one tells you about being in court, I'm sure there's some lawyers in, is that barristers are essentially just actors.
Yes.
And we had George Carman, who was this fabulous lawyer, but George he gave an opening speech, and then there was a break in court, and he was outside with a cigarette, and he said, "How was I?" I thought, I paid you about 200 grand.
Yeah. Needy actor.
Yeah,
Yes.
you'd better be good.
Do you think that you were a bit gung-ho back then in terms of, or maybe other publications were too overcautious?
Yeah, I think the climate was completely different. And I look at the sort of things that got us into trouble then that really wouldn't now.
Right.
Because essentially libel has been democratised. You all do it now online all the time.
Right.
Literally
Yeah, you're
everybody is libeling each other almost permanently.
Right.
So the bar went way down.
Okay.
And that meant that nobody's interest really was in that sort of thing. And predominantly it was sort of rich people who now sue private eye, they do it on the grounds of confidentiality or on the grounds of privacy. I mean, literally nobody bothers with libel anymore. It's almost like them saying, yeah, obviously I'm a complete crook, though we take that as read, but I'm privately a complete crook. And it's confidential, the crooked dealings I have with other people.
That's confidential, right? Yeah, of course it is.
So, there's a very good thing on tonight about COVID PPE equipment, which again, I mean, we got into terrific trouble with because we said the public has paid for this. We should be allowed to know, A, how much money Baroness Moan is making. It seems reasonable for us to know. And B, whether she's stuffing it all in a family trust offshore and pretending she isn't. If you're watching on streaming, I haven't bothered with allegedly.
Yes.
Because we don't have to do that anymore. But essentially, all of those people said this is a confidential transaction between private companies and the government, and you're not allowed to know.
Which is nuts.
Which is nuts
Yeah,
and unbelievably infuriating.
Yeah.
So that's where we're not in the courts so often, because we're often faffing around in the courts. I mean, sort of trying to solve it before we get into
Right.
the court on those issues.
Is that experience though on your part, or is it that there's both the law changing and you getting...
It's the law changing, and we've got more robust.
Right.
I mean, we've got a lovely lawyer called Robin, who died very sadly recently. But his speciality was the very long 28-page fuck off letter. Which
I think you
said,
summarised it very nicely.
yeah, and that became a terrific weapon. Once very rich people think they're not going to just cave in,
Right.
they're not just going to give up, they're mad enough to do this,
Yes.
then you have a huge advantage.
Yes. I mean, I think actually on Have I Got News For You, Jimmy Mulville was always very good at going,
Yes.
I'll go to court. Mark and I wrote, my co-writer Mark Butt and I wrote a joke for Have I Got News For You, which was actually a very good joke, but it we got sued by Rupert Allison.
Yes.
Who used to sue as a matter of course.
Yep.
And it went to court. Jimmy went, no, I'm not settling out of court, I'm going to fight him in court. So it went to court. And the Hat Trick Productions lawyer said, we put it to you, Mr. Allison, that you sue people as a bit of a hobby, and people usually settle out of court, and you make quite a nice living out of it. He was, that is absolutely monstrous slur, I will. And they said, can we play the interview of Rupert Allison on Clive Anderson Talks Back, another Hat Trick programme? And there's a tape of Rupert Allison saying, I sue people as a bit of a hobby. People settle out of court. And in the end, Colin Swash was signing copies of Have I Got News For You for the jury, so we won that one.
He called him a conniving little shit.
Yeah, that was the yes.
Which he is and was.
That was the punchline of our joke, but it kept getting repeated in court. It's not
Yep.
actually a very good joke, so I was really embarrassed about it.
It is just the pleasure when the process of going to court means you just get to repeat it
Yeah, over and over
endlessly.
again, what we are.
That was really enjoyable in a number of cases.
So Private Eye settled down a bit, and you've
Yes.
been in it a few years, and it's remained remarkable. It's gone from strength to strength, in fact. And in this age of screens and social media, this old-fashioned, inky magazine that hasn't changed its font in 40 years is the most successful it's ever been, isn't it?
Yeah, we're selling, I don't know, about 231,000 copies.
And 47.
Fortnightly. And I'm a huge believer in print. And I always feel a bit like Joe Biden's doctor. I say, it's alive. It's great print. No, it really is. It's really good.
But it's gone against all trends. I mean, it's sort of, people have a sort of faith in it. And, you know, my American friends are here this month. They could not believe that London did not have an evening paper anymore in print edition. And yet Private Eye continues to sell pretty much in presenting as it always did. You haven't got colour, you haven't got pop-up
There's a bit
bits
of colour
on the front page. But have you come under pressure to change it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, every 5 years someone comes and says, what you're failing to do, Ian, is the digital version. And, you know, print's dead, it's time you went digital.
Yeah.
And I always go, that means I have to give away the content for free.
Yeah.
Or put it behind a paywall which no one pays for, or I go around with a bucket to my readers and say, oh, please.
Yeah, like The Guardian does every time you click on it.
Yeah. Look, I know this is really annoying, but give us some money.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do any of those things. And I just calculated that people will pay for something that's good.
Right.
You know, I have really good journalists. You know, I have Craig Brown writing a diary. He's not cheap. I would not expect him to be, and I want to pay them.
Right.
I think, you know, journalism is a craft. It's a noble profession, obviously, but it's also something people do well or don't do well, and I want to pay for it. And I think print is still the best way of getting there. And Private Eye, you can be reading a piece here about a church that's been burnt down because nobody can be bothered to subsidise it, and here you can be reading about sort of fishing practices in Scotland, and no algorithm will link you through all those stories.
Yes.
The only way you'll get them is if they're all there on a broadsheet, and you may not be interested in them, but your eye may go to one of the others, and a lot of our younger readers start buying it for the jokes, and then when they get older they say, God, your jokes are puerile, but the investigation is good.
Right.
Or the other way around.
And so,
But a magazine that recently, you know, we've had the post office story, we've done the blood inquiry, you know, the stuff we're writing is still having an effect.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is...
and that's rarer. And that is rarer, that the people at the post office, we had Toby Jones sitting where you're sitting not so long ago, and he turned the journalism into drama, and it had a massive impact in this country.
And again, I mean, people say, that was fabulous television. Don't you feel a bit annoyed that you didn't have that effect? And I go, no. I mean, it was a fabulous bit of drama. I mean, it was exactly what teledrama should do. But they couldn't have done it if Richard, and particularly Alan Bates, hadn't spent 20 years digging up the stuff.
Yeah.
So it's these things combine.
Yeah.
But the drama was, you know, terrific.
But as you say, it needs the journalist to do that. To do the digging. So when you took on Private Eye, you were already an established comedy writer. You were writing on Spitting Image, which was at the peak of its popularity back then. Was writing topical satire the sort of thing you always hoped you would do and thought you would do, or was journalism always an interest as well?
No, I mean, as a student, I'd done a lot of sort of jokes. I'd done student review. I'd done lots of rooms much smaller than this.
Well, acting. Performing.
Performing, yeah.
Oh, I would love to have seen that.
Oh, yes. I'm not sure you would.
So you're a comedy person, essentially.
Oh, yeah. But then I became, you know, my first job almost was I was writing stuff for Private Eye, and there was no way, once you got in there to do the jokes, I couldn't realise they were sort of coexistent. They depended on each other. And in the old days, you know, Claude Coburn, who's a terrifically good columnist, was sort of quite left-wing by today's standards, Claude. But he would say, what Private Eye can do is, you know, week one we'll tell you something you don't know. Week two we'll joke about something you know, and you'll go, oh, I know that. So you get a double hit.
Yeah.
And that's always the way.
And what were those early Spitting Image years like? Because I read that book about the formation of the show, and it sounded insane. That first series when the show was finding its feet.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was sort of terrible, actually. I mean, when the puppeteers were sort of leading the show and the writers were trying to catch up.
And no one knew whether the voices would actually match.
Yeah.
And everybody who took on the show went bankrupt. It was unbelievably expensive. And Roger Law, who was sort of great, brilliant caricaturist and Maoist, was not the greatest at finance.
He's the worst businessman I've ever worked with.
So it was, but it was incredibly exciting because it was ITV,
Yeah.
and it had an audience of about 12 million people.
Incredible. And you were finding out how to do the show live in front of the nation's gaze.
Yes, and we worked out after a bit that sketches were fine until the end, where the puppets had to hit each other.
Yes.
There was no other ending. If you tried to be clever, it didn't work. Essentially,
Yeah.
Nick and I just ended up writing puppets hit each other, and that was the end of a sketch.
It sort of was Punch and Judy in a way, wasn't it?
It
Physical
was.
Punch and Judy, yeah.
And nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I was literally in a cab the other day, and a bloke said to me, "Oh, what did you used to do before you did this?" And I said, "Oh, well, one of my first jobs was Spitting Image." He said, "I'll tell you a sketch I like, the one of the royal family naming the baby." And I thought, brilliant, that's one of the first sketches I ever wrote.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
And it was Diana's baby, and he quoted the whole sketch.
I could
with me.
do that as well. Gilby, what about Gilby?
Gilby,
Yes. Says, see, I remember it.
Yeah.
It made an impression on me.
That was the Queen Mother's suggestion.
Yes. Oh, well done. I love that I remember it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, any particular memories of those Spitting Image times?
Again, I remember the election where Mrs. Thatcher won for
Yes, 87, yeah.
87, which is the last show I appeared on, and Nick and I had written a rewrite of Cabaret in which Tomorrow Belongs to Me was sung by the entire incoming Tory government.
That had a massive impact, I have to say.
with
If you don't
flags
remember
and brollies.
it was so depressing because they'd won their third election in the row, if you're a Labour like me and
Yeah.
some of our guests. But
And we wrote this sketch, and there was they were very, very unkeen to put it on. It was part of the pleasure in those days was getting sketches on.
past the censors. And
Past the censors. One of the first sketches we got through was we did an adaptation of the King Midas touch for Robert Maxwell. In which everything Robert Maxwell touched turned to shit.
it was great animation, if you can picture it.
It was unbelievably good, and he doesn't like to admit it now, but Nick Park, the lovable Wallace and Gromit creator, used to do a lot of animation. Is that me?
I don't know. Is that
sorry.
all right for sound? Yep.
For a Spitting Image. And anyway, the Maxwell thing was absolutely incredibly funny. And then it was pointed out to John Lloyd that Robert Maxwell was one of the shareholders of ITV Central. I think it was Anglia he was on. And he'd insisted that the show didn't go out. And John Lloyd said, then you don't ever have the show again.
Right.
And they put it out.
Wow. Well, that's great.
And
that he had the
Maxwell
courage.
was absolutely... No, John was unbelievably fearless.
Right.
And it was much more fun being a writer, because you just went, not my problem.
Yeah. But you need those courageous gatekeepers. don't
Yeah,
you?
and he was fabulous.
Yes.
And then he put out the Tomorrow Belongs to You sheet, and Nick and I were sitting in a room full of Central TV executives, and at the end of the show they all hugged each other and told each other how brave they'd been. As they were drinking, and they ignored Nick and I. We were sitting there, didn't even get a drink.
That's the life of a writer.
Much better here. No, it was...
Yeah, it was a very powerful moment.
And it was very, very good fun.
Yes.
But the other writers on the show, I mean, I was
Hunter
in the
and
room,
Doherty,
Hunter and Doherty, the guys who wrote Red
Grant and
Dwarf,
Naylor.
Grant and Naylor.
Yeah. No, so they all went off and started major TV shows of their own, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Red Dwarf. Did you have a plan when you left to do some major thing? I know you did Harry Enfield for a bit, but that wasn't straight away. Did you have a project you were working on? Do you remember?
No.
But but fairly soon.
Yeah.
Fairly soon.
Fairly soon, in the chronology.
In the chronology, or my Wikipedia research is incredible. There's this panel show that comes on and sort of version of the news quiz done on telly. Again, John Lloyd was involved in the first version of that. But believe it or not, I mean, I don't know if people appreciate, but when Have I Got News for You first went out, the Prime Minister was Margaret Thatcher. That's how long this show has been going.
Yeah.
And it was sort of fantastic because it was her last months, and the news was gripping and hilarious at the same time. And you were in that chair with Paul and Angus and
it was, and it was. I mean, Have I Got News for You was we recorded a pilot, which was absolutely terrible.
What was it called?
It was called John Lloyd's News Round.
Put on John Craven there.
For the older members of the audience, like me. And we recorded a pilot in Wandsworth in Studio X, and my mother came. And, and at the end of it, she said, "Never mind, dear." That was her view of my subsequent career, which was a bit sad.
So you had no idea how long that show would run? And
and she was right. It was not very good, the pilot. But it did get good quite quickly, partly because it was the end of Thatcher, partly because Angus was the perfect host when he came in, and partly because Paul and I, we just knew it would work.
I also think there's a sort of chemistry there. It's a sort of sitcom, really. It's sort of married couple, middle class Ian, working class Paul.
Yeah.
There was a sort of great dynamic there going on, and I think that it just had this sort of not matey, but sort of a chemistry there that worked really well, I think.
Yeah, and British comedy, people say it's about sex. It isn't. It's always about class.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect.
Yeah. I did metal work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. As Paul would always say. You know.
I mean, Paul's always furious when anyone comes on who's been to Oxford, Cambridge, or almost any other university. Because he feels we're stuffed shirts and got it easy, and then tells you about his metalwork GCSE. So there was always that dynamic.
Yes.
And Paul, I mean, for years he didn't believe that my television had an ITV button.
I actually remember my parents disapproving of ITV. That takes me back. Did you have any idea how long the show would run? Did you have any idea?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, what is it? It's 35 years.
It's 35 years this year.
Yeah, which is incredible. And I mean, what a journey.
Yeah, and I mean, it could easily have ended when Angus left, but it didn't. It reinvented itself. And to be honest, they keep taking off other shows. You know, we're not quite America yet.
Yeah.
But let's see next series. It remained independent, capable of being
and quite
hard.
Quite courageous sometimes. I mean, you'd actually say to Archer, you did this, or you'd get Christine Hamilton on or whatever, and Neil Hamilton, and sort of expose them. But do you think there's a slight syndrome where it sort of gets them off the hook because they're sort of funny and human, and they sort of, people laugh and the joke, the tension is punctured somehow?
Yes, I mean, there's always that possibility, but I still think it's better to see them and have a go than to say, no, we don't allow the following people on television because we don't approve of them. And you're only allowed on Have I Got News for You if you read The Guardian.
Yeah.
And anybody else, you know, the public are so stupid that they'll just love them and vote for them. So we mustn't have anyone on who's a little bit populist or a little right-wing. I don't buy that. I think that's cobblers. And so I think you have to have them on.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time Boris Johnson came on Have I Got News for You, he wrote an op-ed in the Telegraph saying how appallingly I behaved.
And how it was all written. He said it was all written, which it wasn't, as one of the writers on it.
Yeah. A, it wasn't written, and B, he said I'd ambushed him by revealing the tape of when he threatened to beat up Darius Guppy. He and Darius Guppy threatened to beat up a reporter. And he said, you have no evidence of that tape, and I said, I have a copy of that tape, at which point he went nuts. So...
but came back on, and do you think it's a fair comment to say? don't think I'm alone in thinking that he wouldn't have got to be Mayor of London, wouldn't have got that nomination without Have I Got News for You, and then wouldn't have got on to be Prime Minister.
I don't buy that.
Don't you?
No.
I think he became a celebrity.
He was a celebrity when we invited him on.
I think he became a much
When
bigger
Jeremy
celebrity.
Paxman retired from Newsnight, they did a celebratory interview with Paxman and Boris. That was before.
Right. But I
The
think,
two of them did half an hour. When he was a journalist, he was a celebrity. He was on 11 times before
Yeah.
he was Mayor of London. He never came on after he was Mayor of London.
Right.
The people of London voted for him
They
twice. I blame them.
no, still the voters.
They had a perfectly good look at him. They saw that this bloke couldn't run a panel show, let alone a fucking city.
Right. No, fair point. No, to blame the voters, but I think Have I Got News for You had a big part in making him a celebrity.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that.
There.
No.
Okay. I also think that Charles Kennedy wouldn't have been leader of the Liberals without all the panel shows and the interviews.
No,
and
I think he would have been.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't. Okay. So, whilst somebody here talked about America, we see what's happening in America now with
Yes.
with satirists. Jimmy Kimmel's satire that he got cancelled for this week was the most moderate sort of commentary that could have easily been on Have I Got News for You.
Yep.
And then the cowards of ABC and Disney have cancelled the show. The sort
Yep.
of craven, fawning.
Yeah, no, it's,
And does that worry that might come across the Atlantic in that sort of way?
yeah. I mean, the pressure in Britain is usually from the government on the BBC.
Yes.
And every single government we've had since Have I Got News for You started has attempted in some way to put pressure on.
Yes.
The BBC is always under attack by whichever government is in power and says it's hugely biased against it. So you always get that. What you don't get, which is in America, is just the total rollover
Right.
of the organisations themselves at the threat from the Trump administration.
Yes.
And they just take them off.
Yeah, it's
I
terrifying.
mean, the
but-
American journalists used to lecture us. God, they used to lecture us about the American Constitution and checks and balances and how tabloid filth in Britain would not exist there. And we had a sort of what we thought was robust, but they thought was irresponsible. And then when it comes to it, they sack the cartoonists, they sack the
Yes.
late night hosts. All the major newspapers just cave in,
Yeah, it's terrifying.
turn up at Trump's
Inauguration, yeah.
inauguration,
Yeah.
looking rather like the people who turned up at Putin's inauguration, most of whom are now dead.
Wow.
They've
Yeah.
fallen out of a window. Autocrats aren't very good at keeping those sorts of promises, but again, people don't tend to learn.
No, but your equivalents in America now, the John Olivers and those
Yeah.
people, they're in a very, very scary place now, and they're a
Yeah.
very difficult place.
And there's an equivalent of Have I Got News for You in the States, and I just wonder
yeah.
how long there, because basically they get the equivalent of Ofcom. The man who runs it just says, you want to do any business, you're involved in a merger, you're off. And
Yeah.
Trump, he does that thing of he appears from behind the toilet in the aeroplane.
Does that-
It's always very, very bizarre, isn't it, when
Yeah.
you watch it and you think,
Yeah. It gives a,
what's happening in there? Have you just come out and talks direct to the journalists? And he said, most people, these networks, they don't support the presidency, so maybe they shouldn't have a license. This is the land of the First Amendment.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had years in which they told us about how not having a written constitution is a disaster, and this would protect them. He doesn't care, and there's no fight back.
no,
There's
I have to say,
literally none.
yeah, it's gutting how
Hmm.
weak the opposition to him is. But for you personally, as an outspoken voice in the sort of public domain, is that a scarier place to be now?
I'm not aware of Trump's interest in my
Not you.
career.
Well, for example,
No.
Charlie Hebdo in Paris.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's your equivalent magazine in France.
Yes.
The gunman came in and killed them all.
Yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
don't put big pictures of Muhammad on your cover.
Yeah.
Do you make a safety choice not to do that, or an intellectual choice that it's not very interesting anyway?
That, in the end, we did put one of those cartoons in, and it was all fairly grim. I mean, I try and maintain the line between freedom of speech and stirring up a hornet's nest and getting the staff killed. which is obviously
It's a massive responsibility, isn't it?
a balance. But, in that case, we were Je suis Charlie.
Right.
I gave a statement in the Rushdie affair. I put the Ayatollah Khomeini on the cover because I don't think there should be fatwas against people who write.
Yeah.
The Foreign Office said, you really are mad, you shouldn't do that. But I did do it.
So that puts you,
Yeah.
possibly in the firing line. That's quite, that's a conscious decision. Is that a conversation you have with your family? And
Oh, yeah.
it's where's Victoria?
Yeah, no, we had long discussions
Yes,
about it.
Well, no, it is a tough thing that you don't, you start off writing gags at university. You don't
Yeah.
expect that one day you're thinking, do I want a fatwa on myself or not?
Yeah, or, from the other side, do you want a shutdown
Yeah.
on any criticism of an increasingly autocratic
Yeah.
presidential system?
Yeah.
And, the sucking up to Trump, which is sort of quite funny at the level it's at the moment, at what point does the current government start saying, well, you're absolutely right about abortion protests and other freedom of speech, because some of these shows are pretty rude.
Right.
I just, part of me thinks, how far does that go?
Yeah.
I have enough belief in Britain that I think we wouldn't stand for that. One of my favourite stories is one of Private Eye's readers got arrested recently. He'd blown up a joke about Israel, about Palestine action, saying the action that was appropriate and the action that was inappropriate. It was a joke in there, and he'd taken it on a protest. And he was arrested by the police.
That's right.
For carrying this joke. And I rang him. We managed to get hold of him. And I was really hoping that he would be a media-friendly arrestee.
I can see what's coming.
And he answered the phone, and the first thing he said to me, he said, yes, the police, they can't really do nuance. And I thought, yes. And then he's a retired headmaster.
Oh, great.
And he said, I'm basically Palestine solidarity, not Palestine action. You do understand that? I said, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've got that. And then he was unbelievably funny and sweet, and he'd been, just carted and banged up and thrown in a van for making this press. He'd come out, and he said, the next week, he said, I was very, very nervous because there was meant to be another protest, and I didn't know what to do. And then his friends had printed another 50 placards, and they'd all turned up with them. Not one of them was arrested.
Okay.
Which is a huge win for him.
A win. Yeah, that's great. Good support.
There are there are risks.
There are risks.
And jokes are troublesome, stories are troublesome.
Absolutely. But do you worry about the ethics of a particular joke? Do you sometimes go, that's punching in the wrong direction, or you look at a joke and go, where's that joke coming from?
Yeah, I try and do all of that first.
Yes.
Sometimes I get it wrong, but on the whole, I'm prepared to defend sort of almost any joke I've written or I've published. I think I have thought about that. I thought about it when I put it in. Fortnightly magazine, you can't say it's the news cycle. Put a joke in and people say, can you defend that?
Yeah.
I put in a joke, Grand Old Duke of York. And this one was the bipolar Grand Old Duke of York. And the joke was when he's up, and when he's down. And we got a whole load of letters about this joke saying this is really offensive, how appalling, how did you put it in? And then I got a letter from a man. He said, dear sir, I suffer from a bipolar condition, and when I saw your cartoon I was absolutely appalled. Then I looked at it again a bit later, I felt fine about it.
Excellent.
I thought that's our readers.
There was a time in the sort of early Blair years when there was a sort of a fashioning comedy to sort of punch down a bit with, Little Britain and maybe the Slobs and Harry Enfield, which were very funny. But I think one of your characters on the Harry Enfield show was Tim Nice but Dim, which was
It
obviously
was.
punching up. Tim Nice but Dim. Quite a few of those moved into Clapham recently. I don't know if you've noticed. But did you ever look at the slobs and go? I don't know if those were yours, but did you ever think?
No, I mean, again,
I think it was shocking in the Blair years to just laugh at the poor in a funny sort of way.
yeah, and Harry, I mean, Nick and I wrote this sketch about Tim Nice but Dim because Harry said to me, he said, all my characters seem to shout a lot and are working class. And we said, well, we'd like to do a sketch about people we were at school with. And most of them were Tim Nice but Dim, who were, they were bloody good blokes.
Bloody good
And many of them had ended up working for their dad's water filter company.
They run the estate agents around in Clapham, yes.
And I sort of loved them and found them very funny.
You see, I thought...
And they played air guitar to Dire Straits, and they never quite got anything.
Yes.
Oh, sort of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. But did you ever talk to Harry about the slobs or about...
No.
It's only subsequently I thought, we're really laughing at very low, powerless people. But I think they were arrogant. I think that's how
But
they
I
got
think
away with
Wayne
it.
Slob, I mean, I think Harry made him an immensely powerful character. I remember we did a fake 7-Up, that series where they took children. And we did Tim at 7. And followed him up. And then there was Wayne. And it just, by the time we'd done it, it was pretty clear that Wayne had had a much better life.
Yeah.
No.
So-
I mean, Harry is very complicated and gets into trouble all the time. But on
Yes.
the whole, I think his heart is in the right place.
No, I think his heart's in the right place. But there was a period when it was just like, Little Britain, the slobs, Karen, am I bothered, am I bothered? And I just thought, all these jokes are about working class people, written by people who went to public school.
Yeah.
And,
well, hers weren't, presumably.
maybe not, actually, you're right on that one. But no, I just thought that was an interesting sort of diversion. Let's change the subject a little bit. We're in a theatre.
Yes.
You've written a bit of theatre as well. You've written quite a lot of theatre. You've written plays with Nick Newman.
Yeah.
Spike, about Spike Milligan.
Yep.
Wipers Times, which I saw at Richmond, which was about... Well, tell us what the Wipers Times was about. Did anyone see the Wipers Times? Yes!
Yes.
Say yes. Victoria, you didn't say yes.
Yeah, no. It toured for 2 years, for God's sake. I don't know where you were. There was a trench newspaper called the Wipers Times, called Wipers because the British troops couldn't pronounce Ypres, and it was based there. And I made a little documentary about it, and then I thought, this is just too brilliant a story. And I got the copies of this satirical trench newspaper, which is absolutely wonderful. And it had two officers who, they were foraging. They were in the salvage unit, the Sherwood Foresters. In Ypres, they went to a basement and they found a fully working print machine. And being British officers, instead of smashing it up, they said, let's produce a satirical paper right here on the front in 1916. Not much going on. A sergeant in the regiment turned out to have been a printer in Fleet Street. He'd been on the Telegraph. And they started producing this magazine, which was unbelievably black, unbelievably funny, and we wanted to recreate it. I mean, they had fake adverts in the front. The first advert, the first copy was taxi service, and there was a picture of an ambulance. And it said, fancy getting home to Blighty? Our service is much quicker. And it was that level of
dark humour.
Dark humour.
Yeah. And it's very related to satirical magazine, so obviously a personal connection for you. And
again, that was sort of, I think, the best thing Nick and I have ever done, because they were called Roberts and Pearson. And after the war, neither of them managed to find employment in the great demob in sort of 1919, 1920. Both of them went abroad. They were largely unrecognised. And we ended the play by saying they didn't even get an obituary in the Times. And then at the end of the first run in the West End, the Times ran a full-page obituary of both of them.
Oh, that's
We thought,
fantastic.
yes, we've done
well
something
done.
useful in our
Ah,
lives.
the power of storytelling again. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it is drama. It has
then-
the most amazing effect.
And then Spike, it was about Spike Milligan. I saw that as well. That was wonderful.
Yes.
What a great central performance. I mean, great writing, obviously, but what a great central performance as
Yeah.
well.
No, we had John Dalglish, and then we had Robert Wilford who did it. And again, I suppose the theme of the stuff we've done is trying to. I feel people are very condescending about the past, and I think that's a failure of modern perception. Is just looking backwards and saying, well, these people are rather limited, and a lot of their views are a bit sad, well done for them for trying. And I don't look at the past that way. I look at the past and I'm always amazed at what they did despite prevailing attitudes, despite
Yes.
what they could do.
So, yes, both of those are about people who are sort of defying the establishment, really, which has sort of been your life
and
as well.
Spike was,
Yeah.
I mean, he was incredibly funny. I mean,
Yeah.
and also he spent most of his life being furious at the BBC, who'd given him endless series and as much published as possible. But he was always really cross. And the BBC had censored him in the early days. And if you think 1950s, Spike Milligan did a whole programme of the Goons, which was the coronation. And people say, oh, well, you know, nowadays we're not, you know, we've lost all that deference. They didn't have any deference.
Yeah.
Spike Milligan did an impersonation of the Queen as the Duchess boiled the potatoes. I mean,
So
anyway.
Is writing plays something you would think you might have done more of if you'd not been running Private Eye for 40 years? And have I got news for you? I mean, would you like to have done more long, or you used to have ambitions to write a film or another full-length play?
No, I've just been given a lot of opportunities along the way.
Right.
Theatre, I've written 5 plays with Nick in the last sort of 10 years or so, which has been absolutely wonderful, which is partly why I'm here.
Yeah, what you're saying.
Because I absolutely love theatres, and we've started at the Watermill, which is rather like this. It's a sort of jewel of a small theatre which puts on...
It's in Newbury, isn't it?
In Newbury, all
Yeah.
sorts of productions, and then transfers some of them and moves some of them, and it's just endlessly enjoyable.
And flexing a very different muscle, I suppose, to
Yeah.
sitting in the Private Eye offices.
And you can change things.
Yes.
And I've spent a lot of time on television. You do it, it's finished, it's over. In the theatre, you can go along and you can think, that bit didn't work, and you can change it, you can make it better.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. And you've written sitcoms with Nick.
Yes.
My Dad's the Prime Minister, Nick Newman.
Yeah,
lovely
which is
chap.
for a kids' show, which is about how awful it is having famous parents.
And what was the other thing you wrote? Oh, Murder Most Horrid you did? I
Yes.
remember, yes, we both wrote on that.
Yeah.
And
Our lives have coincided a great deal.
we were just saying out back, I've sort of surfed in the wake of Nick's success most of my life. So when he left Spitting Image, we were the junior boys who were brought in to take over. Then when he was doing Have I Got News for You, I used to write the jokes for Angus. So we never actually sat in a room and written jokes together, I don't think. But we've sort of
No.
been in the same rooms for like
No,
40
we've been
years.
around.
Yeah.
And my next Broadway show.
It's all about you tonight. It's all about me. It's all about me. That's a good time to turn it over to the audience for some questions. So I'm going to see who's got a question for Ian. When I say questions, anyone who says this is a comment more than a question, I pull a lever and you fall into the basement. So questions only. George.
Is there any chance you might be inviting Mr. Kimmel to come on Have I Got News for You?
Yes, well, I think he's already been invited on the American one. So, I mean, no, I'd love to have him on. I mean, I couldn't believe how the overreaction of the right, A, to sanctify, Kirk, and B, to stop anyone repeating anything he'd ever said. Which seems to be the least you can do. I mean, you don't want to speak ill of the dead, but you can repeat what they said.
Or say who they were.
Yes, well, quite
Yeah.
to a British audience who didn't care. But so it is extraordinary. I mean, that shutdown, and then there was some American bishop saying he was St. Paul, and someone else said he was Martin Luther King, and you think, He genuinely wasn't.
No.
And I don't think that's particularly offensive. I rejoice in no one's death,
No,
but honestly,
It's gone crazy. And Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, is now compelling their universities to put up a statue of Charlie Kirk. And now, so if they defy it, they lose their funding. So
Yeah.
we're in this insane...
well, this is a man who thought the Civil Rights Act was a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's quite difficult to defend.
He'd be a good guest.
Yeah.
Jimmy
No.
Kimmel, not Charlie Kirk. Jimmy Kimmel would be a good guest.
Yeah,
another
no,
another question, lady there.
Worst guest you've had on Have I Got News for You?
Don't say me.
I wasn't very keen on Dame Andrea Jenkin. See, there's a name to shock you. Who else was terrible?
There was somebody who said nothing. There was an Arab guy, a sheikh or something. There was somebody who'd been involved in some... He was brought on because he'd been involved in some scandal.
Yeah.
And he just was not able to talk at all.
We had a bloke from MI6 on once who didn't say anything. He wasn't very good. I mean, to be honest, the worst guests are often the best.
To get some tension.
I mean, I like Conrad Black, you know, the peer and owner of the Telegraph who went to jail. And he came back to England. Sorry?
The margarine.
The tub of lard.
Yeah. No, yes, no. No, the tub was a very good guest because he didn't say anything.
That was because Roy Hattersley had let down the show for about the fourth time at very short notice. And so mischievous Harry Thompson had the idea of going, well, we'll say that Roy Hattersley didn't turn up and we're replacing him with a tub of lard. And it had huge impact. It was talked about a great deal.
And I managed to lose
Against a tub of lard.
against Paul Merton and an inanimate object.
Yes. I mean, I will say, I've been watching clips in preparation for this, and I watched a clip this afternoon of you with Nigel Farage on, and that's not a very comfortable watch. But I mean, maybe it's good television, but it's not, it's just...
Well, it'd be my fault when he's Prime Minister.
Well, according to me, according to O'Farrell.
No, he was furious.
He was furious. Has he been on many times?
No, but he felt there was a lack of respect.
Oh,
and he's used
okay.
to going on Newsnight,
Right, yeah.
where they say, "Oh, you're going to be Prime Minister."
Right. I've been on the show on Ian's team and opposite Ian's team, and I was on once with George Galloway, opposite George Galloway,
Yes.
which was not a pleasant experience. And I made he was just setting up the Respect Party, and I just said to him, is it your observation that there aren't enough parties on the far left? And he jumped down my throat. He says, better than crawling up Tony Blair's arse. And Ian, like a saint, jumped in and went, well, it's better than crawling up Saddam Hussein's arse. And I felt so relieved that Ian had come to my rescue. But I've never met a man that I thought, if you were in power, there would be bodies floating down the river. That's what I felt when he stared into my eyes with that anger. I thought, whoa, I'm genuinely scared of you. And
there are a few people I've certainly met on the show who I've thought, even if they weren't angry, they would say, Ian, I'm terribly sorry, but you've got to die.
Right.
And it's a problem for us, and it is regrettable, but goodbye.
Yeah.
And there are a couple.
Yeah.
And that I find them really terrible.
Yeah.
Who's the worst one that's held a grudge?
We're talking Piers Morgan, aren't we?
I remember that episode.
And of course, I'm above that. I don't bear a grudge, and the fact that he's appeared in Private Eye with his name spelt as Piers Moron for the last 20 years it's a coincidence. It's a typo. I don't know how it happens.
But he took it so badly, having the Mickey taken out of him. First of all, Clive Anderson was on that show and Clive Anderson said to Piers, you have come on his show and trying to turn the audience against him. They're going to like Ian if they've come to a recording of Have I Got His View. But then Piers Morgan started a campaign at the Mirror to dig up dirt on Ian, which he spent a long time and a lot of money, and I think he found that you crashed your bike at university at one time after a party or something. That was the worst he could find on you.
He spent an unbelievable amount of the Mirror's money. I mean, he put journalists in the village where I'm living in Sissinghurst in Kent, and they were there for days, and they took pictures of me doing the school run, and they were just sort of at the door, and then I got a call from the vicar of our church, and he said, Ian, I've had someone from the Mirror on the phone. And I said, what did he want to know? He said, he wanted to know if you confessed anything juicy. And so,
I told them the lot.
so I had to point out that I'm Church of England, we don't do confession. You're thinking of the Catholics. We do a general confession in which I say we, along with the rest of the congregation. But also, he was just completely bemused, the vicar. And he
That's
had
sort of
he had a-
reassuring, though, isn't it? It's reassuring.
It was
that nobody,
lovely.
nobody in Sissinghurst was going, "Oh, I'll give you the dirt on Ian
No.
Hislop." Not that there is any dirt on Ian Hislop.
No, it was the village were absolutely marvellous, right down to the retired policeman in the house opposite, because there was a bloke there who just an agency reporter who stood there and took pictures of me whenever I appeared, and whatever, and he parked his car there all day, and this this retired policeman decided he'd had enough of him in the driveway. He went up to him and said, "You're a fucking pedo."
Okay.
Agency reporter from Kent News. No, I'm not.
Excellent.
Didn't see him again.
Another question for Ian from the audience. Gentleman there.
Have you ever successfully fought off a libel action with the defence that you used the word allegedly?
No, because it is no defence. Using the word allegedly, which I tried repeatedly to tell, have I got news to you? If you say allegedly, all you are doing is repeating the libel, which is another offence. So you are compounding the original offence. So it's a hopeless defence. I do recommend no one do that.
Okay.
Because it doesn't work. You look as though you've tried it.
Despite suggesting for many years on the show that it may be a defence.
Yes, well, I needed something. And also, it sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds like, oh,
But
we're edgy, we're edgy.
it's just saying
Yeah.
other people alleged it and I'm repeating it. Whereas nowadays I just say, he's a terrific crook.
Another question, please. Lady in there.
I just wondered if you've done any radio.
Oh, God, he's done loads of radio.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot from Radio 4 over the years.
Done some documentaries, haven't you? And
Yeah, there's been a series just on called Old Jokes, in which I go back to Anglo-Saxon times and no kidding. And I was trying to find out the first time various jokes had been done. British is very keen on our sense of humour. I wanted to know when it started. And the oldest English joke is Pope Gregory. It was reported by the Venerable Bede. You're going to love this series.
I know this joke.
In which the Pope saw various English people in the slave market and said, "Who are they?" And someone said, "They're Angles." And he said, "Non Angli, but Angeli. They're not Angles, they're angels."
You had to be-
Fantastically good
You
guy.
had to be there. He got a series. He got a series
I
already.
got a series out of this. Anyway, and so that's the
That's
last
sort
one,
of-
but I have done quite a lot over the years.
But that joke is why his attention was turned to England to be invaded. So
And it's
like-
why we're England.
Yeah, yeah.
He did follow it up.
Oh,
There are
right.
two other jokes that are absolutely fantastic. There was a tribe called the D-Era, and Pope Gregory said, "Oh, that's like the DA's era, the wrath of God." Unbelievably good. Second gag.
Puns. Puns used
Just
to be funny.
coming along.
Some questions at the back there. The lady at the back there. Yes, you.
What are you most proud of about the private eye and the political journalism that you enabled by being editor? What are you most proud of?
I think probably last year I felt the post office thing when Alan Bates wrote me a letter and he said, "Dear Ian Hislop," he said, "the latest issue of Private Eye is a disgrace. There's at least one page that doesn't mention the post office." And I thought, yeah, we've done something.
That's great.
I mean, there are a few campaigns, there are probably more than a few campaigns, but it is that sort of thing. And I occasionally get letters from people that say, "You got me out of jail," or "You changed the way my life went because of compensation schemes," or "You alerted to..." Those sorts of things make a real difference.
And that's proper journalism, isn't it?
And that is sort of what we can do. I mean, it's jokes and journalism. It really is. I mean, it's a strange publication. Nobody else does the two things, but I am equally proud of the other bits of it.
There's a gentleman over there with his hand up.
Yeah.
Having the close-up view that you have, do you think the quality of our political leaders of all parties has changed over the last 30 years, and so for better or worse?
I tend to resist that viewpoint because I worked a lot with the previous generation, people like, Richard Ingrams and Paul Foot and Christopher Booker, and the view is always that the current generation of political leaders is terrible. That's what we all think. And as you get older, you've got to resist the temptation to think it's absolutely shocking. If you think of, the 60s, when they built the motorways, all the contracts went to someone who was in the cabinet. What? Things are not so clear cut. The past it's another country, but it looks quite like this one. And I think we should all resist that and saying, well, it's terrible now. It's never been so bad. Because sometimes you think, well, it has actually, and we were there, and you were there. Yes, I try to remain optimistic and use the past as a reference point rather than, oh, the good old days when James Tudor Reid was Under Secretary for Parliament.
We don't know who he is, Ian.
No, you don't. And that was the point. I mean, there is a sort of nostalgia in everything.
Yeah.
There are no good books written anymore. Films are terrible now. Politicians, they're so third-rate.
Well, that's a good time to ask a question from a first-rate politician. Fiona, you had your hand up.
I did it, and it was provoked by something you said when you were describing your best achievements, their campaigns.
Yes.
And you haven't been particularly rude about politicians. And I was just wondering if you'd ever thought that you might want to be one.
That's a really offensive suggestion. No, I think I'm a lot more use on the sidelines. And I think journalists get tempted, and we've had a look at what journalists look like in power,
Right.
Boris, and it's not good. And the ability to write a headline and, in his case, 800 words of blustering bollocks is not useful from someone in power. So, on the whole, no.
And what you do is very political, though, in the eye.
Yes,
You're just-
I'm not saying I'm not interested in politics, but
Yeah.
I think the Fourth Estate, for all its faults, and we have loads, is still a useful part of the democratic process. And making jokes, George Orwell said it's as important to make jokes as to vote. He said they're part of the same process.
Yeah.
And
The first people Putin got rid of was the comedians, actually, off the television.
Yeah, same with Erdogan.
Yeah.
Television comedian exiled straight away.
Right.
Newspapers closed them down.
Yeah.
South Africa, and there was a Zuma. He banished this cartoonist because Zuma, he was president, and he said, "Oh, AIDS, you can cure that by having a shower." And this cartoonist, every time he drew Zuma, he just drew him with a shower
Yeah.
over his head, and and of course he was banished. And
Yeah. So,
it does get under people's skins.
Yeah.
And you can make a point, you can clarify it.
and you
I
can change things, and you've changed things. With
Yeah,
doing
you
big-
shouldn't be too pompous about it because
Well,
it's
I can
sort of
say it. You-
yeah. But people say, well, look at we're going to get a reform government in. That's your fault. What have you done to change that? And you think, well, that's not necessarily my job. I don't do the voting. I can only offer argument and
Shine a light on
jokes
things,
and turn an eye on it. I can't make the public vote in any particular way.
Okay, there's a gentleman at the back there with his arm up.
I think the way we treat politicians now and how they're reported has impacted the quality of them.
I'm going to repeat that because there's people listening next door who might not have heard that. Is the way we treat politicians, what was the second? Yes.
Yeah.
Has that changed who we get?
No, I don't. Well, I don't think mainstream reporting has changed it. I think what has changed it is the internet and that level of abuse and pressure. And I think we've seen that in the last 2 elections, particularly with women candidates, that it just becomes sort of almost unsustainable, the level of sort of trolling and abuse you have to put up with in order to join the public sphere.
Misogyny is in there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now we had George. You've had a question. There's a gentleman up there who had a question.
I've got one.
Oh, all right. Over there. Go ahead.
Oh, well, mine was. Mine was. I was aware that you were Battersea folk back in the day, in the 80s, and Paul Merton, and I'm a Battersea nationalist. So I'm very curious to know if some of that rubbed off on your outlook or things you overheard or anything to do with this area where you lived.
Yeah, I really liked it.
That's why we came here.
And there was an arts theatre.
The Battersea Arts Centre.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It's still going strong. Yeah.
Excellent, which we used to go to, and I did a thing there
Yeah.
earlier on. Yeah, no, I really liked living here.
Yeah. Yeah. For a while.
But did it affect your writing and your humour?
No, because I'm a bit rootless, and I think most of it's in my head. So I'm not very local. Kent, I've got a bit more involved with, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't tend to be.
In a League of Gentlemen kind of way.
Yeah.
Another lady there with a question.
You are obviously very good with words, of that there is no doubt. And thank you for speaking tonight, wonderful. Can you say which writers have particularly influenced you, or who are still following?
Yeah.
Be nice to know.
Yes, I mean, I was sort of. I read English at university, and which, in my time, was just an excuse to read anyone who'd ever been funny. So I read Pope, Dryden, Donne. I loved the Restoration playwrights. I read Bernard Shaw, Oscar Wilde. I read all of those people and thought, this is fabulous. I can't believe this tradition is here. And then in modern times, you know, Beyond the Fringe was the single best sketch show ever written by anyone. I ended up working with Peter Cook. I could not believe my luck, you know, as a young man turning up thinking, I thought you, Alan Bennett,
Jonathan Miller.
Jonathan Miller and Dudley Moore were about as good as it gets. So hugely influenced by them. You know, then I read a lot of Orwell. I read a lot of political writers after that. But and it wasn't just that, it's artists. I've got a series of Hogarth up on my wall, an election series, about 1750. He's commenting on a by-election. Most of the jokes I've stolen since. The great thing about Britain, I mean, there's a blank sheet of people committed to vote for the candidate, and then a huge sheet with lots of names which says don't know at the top. The idea that everything has changed in Britain is nonsense. And I mean, so I'm very influenced by that. And I wrote a play about William Hone, who fought 3 libel actions on 3 subsequent days. The government in 1817 tried to nail him for seditious libel, blasphemy, and the lot. He was tried in the Guildhall in London. They tried 3 days. Every single day, the jury came back with a vote of not guilty. On the 3rd day, there was a crowd of 25,000 people outside shouting not guilty. Hone walked out free. And he wrote an account of it, which I turned into a play.
Fantastic.
But it's a wonderful, wonderful set of speeches. And amazingly, given that Hone wrote it up, everything he said was incredibly funny.
Well, I think we're getting close to the end. I'll have one more question there, and then I'll just round it up.
So you said you stolen all your jokes.
Yes.
What do you think about AI now? How's that going to affect journalism,
Yeah.
comedy, Is it probably
That's a good question.
creativity?
Yeah, no, I think it's slightly worrying. A lot of it is used in journalism already. A lot of newspapers and websites for all the clickbait stuff, it's just AI. I mean, there's not even a human in the process. They're just scraping other people's terrible stories, which is why these things keep appearing that are not at all true. And then they're just scraped, and they appear. So I hate the idea of it. And I know there are lots of good applications of AI, and it sort of finds the cure to cancer and all that. He said dismissively. Honestly, what good is that? But on the whole, I don't think they can do what writers do. They certainly can't yet do anything that the people I rate can do. The people who own them are deeply untrustworthy. So, you've got Elon Musk who owns Grok, and essentially he's told it to correct the imbalance of the reporting in everything he finds. And by imbalance, he means anything that doesn't subscribe to his own views. So you are literally getting AI from him, which is, essentially very right-wing. The Chinese government's, you ask them about Tiananmen Square, they don't know it.
Yeah.
The deep source Chinese AI, it's not there. It's the idea that this is some thing that's divorced from other fallible human beings. It isn't. It's owned by them and run by them, and we have to be as careful about that as we are about anything else.
Okay, I'm going to wrap things up. I think just, I'm going to ask you one final thing myself. In all the spats, Fiona, are you all right? You're going to slip out? No, in all the spats and with politicians and media moguls, is there one episode that will stay with you the longest?
Yes, I'm sure on my deathbed I will remember. Robert Maxwell owned the Mirror, and he was a huge, he was a Labour MP for one. He was a huge sort of force in Britain, and Private Eye were involved in endless battles with Maxwell. And he managed to get W.H. Smith to stop selling Private Eye. He got us removed from the stands. And he decided he would produce a copy of a magazine called Not Private Eye, and he'd produce 1 million copies of it, run it on the Mirror newsstands, and then sell it. And so this was a period where Peter Cook, who, the great comedian, he owned Private Eye, he was a proprietor, and we were sitting in the office incredibly depressed, thinking, we're not even on sale, this thing's about to happen. And Peter said, I bet you they don't want to do this at the Mirror. Let's send round a crate of whiskey to the Mirror office. I said, fine. Sent round a crate of whiskey. We waited an hour. Peter rang up. Said, Peter Cook here, can I speak to the Mirror, I think it was 5th floor department. And he got through, and then he put the phone down, and he said, they're all pissed. He said, let's get in a cab and go round. It was the first time I'd really seen the power of that sort of celebrity. So 5 of us, my secretary, the MD, myself, and Peter Cook, we went round to the Mirror building. Huge, great mirror, doorman there. Doorman looks, oh, it's Peter Cook. Peter says, hello, I'm just on the, all we go in. We go up to the 5th floor. There are 5 people there, including a journalist called John Penrose, who's meant to be back. They're all completely pissed, flat out, lying around this thing. On the table is the dummy copy of Not Private Eye. Just cannot believe I have a quick look at it. It says, it says Ian Hislop is a well-known homosexual who hangs around Hampstead Heath. This was one of the stories in the thing. And obviously I was offended because I thought Clapham Common. And it was full of outrageous libel. And it said my predecessor, Rich Ingram, was a Nazi. And it was great. So I thought, this is fabulous. So I just put it in my coat. And I said to Peter, let's go. And Peter, he hadn't had nearly enough fun yet. So we sat there Peter rang Mirror Catering and ordered champagne for us, which duly arrived. It was absolutely lovely. He rang the Mirror photographic department. He said, we want a photograph of us here. Oh, Peter Cook, absolutely, Peter. Then we went into Maxwell's office. He was in New York. Peter rang up the phone and he said, can I speak to Robert Maxwell? This is very, very urgent. It's Peter Cook here. Maxwell comes on the phone and Peter says, guess where we are? He then starts writing in crayon on the window, hello, Captain Bob, which is what we called him at the time. And then Mirror Security arrived and threw us all out, which was unbelievably good fun. We went from there to the chairman of W.H. Smith's, Sir Simon Hornby. I gave him the thing, said, this is the most disgraceful libel on me, on everybody I know. You cannot sell this and not sell Private Eye. I said, I won't take any action against you over this, but you have to put Private Eye back on sale, which he then did. So it was my equivalent of the Guns of Navarone.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ian Hislop. Thank you, Ian. I'd just like to thank all of you for
Yes, thank
paying
you.
to come and support the theatre and come and see me interview Ian. We're very grateful that these things keep getting such a great audience and such a loyal audience. You've been a very interested and engaged crowd and asked some very good questions, so thank you for your excellent support of Omnibus, and thank you to Marie and the whole team here at Omnibus for helping make this happen, and I hope you had a good evening. Thank you. We step out. Yeah. Well done, Ian, that's great.
Watch that. Watch this. This is the heavy, heavy monster sound. One step beyond.
song is about an English boy who falls in love with a French girl. Of course, not knowing the language, he expresses himself like this. Ooh la la, n'est-ce pas? Oui. Je suis ici pas très long, mais s'il vous plaît, écoute ma song. Vous avez une grande pile to speak my heart. Ah, c'est difficile. Permettez-moi to expliquer, dans my own peculiar way, exactly what mon cœur would say. Darling, je vous aime beaucoup, je ne sais pas what to do. Vous avez completely stolen my heart.